my hopes is to kind of provoke some thought. But very quickly, I want to mention folks have been hearing this term MBSR, and I don't want it to feel like an insider term. A lot of the folks within Mindful Leader and within who have been active in the mindfulness field might have heard it before, but it stands for Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And it's a program of mindfulness that was started in 1979 by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and it's one of the programs Mindful Leader teaches. And so here you'll see, and the title of this in the program was The Future of Mindfulness, Open MBSR and Community-Centered Wellness. I'll speak like a little bit at the end about Open MBSR, but the thing that has been like my obsession for, I would say almost since I got started is like community-centric wellness. And I'll explain more about that as we go and what that means and why I believe it's critical to what's happening and where we're going. So, first up. So I created this image using AI. And I asked AI, create a creepy image of like a robotic like AI figure looking at folks. I shared this with someone, and they were like, this doesn't look creepy. And I was like, man, you must be like into Nine Inch Nails, I don't know. But this is meant to look creepy. And I know David had joined us earlier, and I think we've got very different opinions about AI and what's happening with AI. And I'm just curious, like, raise your hand if you've been in a Tesla FSD in the last 2 months, or a Waymo vehicle, an autonomous vehicle. Okay, a handful of folks. Okay. And there is a William Gibson quote. William Gibson wrote a book called Neuromancer, kind of coined the term cyberspace years ago. And he said the future's happening, but it's happening at different speeds at different places, right? And so folks who might be in San Francisco might be getting a taste of the future before everyone else. And depending on where you are or what you're exposed to, you might be getting kind of a sense of what's to come. And I found, my background's computer engineering. I started playing with ChatGPT 2.0. I've been involved in technology since the 286s, right? If anyone even knows what that is, or the early video games where you'd actually have to type, like Police Quest, anyone remember, like Police Heroes Quest, like back then. And so I've seen technology change in extraordinary ways and go through these different cycles. And always, there's folks that are kind of forward-looking and folks that might not necessarily know what's to come. And so as we think about this age of AI, and I've been exploring this idea, I watched this documentary on YouTube, went down one of these YouTube rabbit holes around the Bronze Age. Does anyone know why the Bronze Age collapsed? And I don't want to side rail us, but it's really fascinating. And so as I was looking into this idea, like, why did the Bronze Age collapse and what happens with these changes in ages, something clicked. And they had this really silly slide. And in this slide, just to give you guys a sense, I've got to just take a quick look at my notes. When we have a change in age, everything changes, right? So technology is the obvious. The economy, you have new economies. And we've seen this even in certain ways with the internet, with mobile technology, like you have these new things that happen. Politics change, new governance happens when we have these changes, these major age changes. New religions form, new currencies form, and essentially everything's up for grabs, right? And I am convinced that AI isn't a tool, but we are entering a new age. And some of the glimpses of this are autonomous vehicles. I think very quickly that's going to be the most relevant, in-your-face way in which everyone's going to sort of experience this shifting in age. I'm curious, who uses ChatGPT or any sort of... Wow, right? We did a survey on this in the early stages, and we asked folks, is there an interest in AI? And this was maybe like 2.5, 3 years ago. And within our audience, I want to say like 10% of people were using ChatGPT. And so already we're seeing this adaptation and integration around AI. And so the key point I want to make here is we're entering a new age. And everything is up for grabs. And in some ways that's exciting, in some ways that's frightening. I believe in hopium, but at the same time, I'm trying to be a realist. So I also believe we're facing the greatest mental health tsunami that we've ever seen. And to quote Gordon Moore, who started Moore's Law, co-founder of Intel, change has never been this fast and never be this slow again? Is that like, that's the tsunami. Okay, we'll make sure it's not gonna. I think we're okay. All right. Making sure, okay. And so, change has never been this fast, and it'll never be this slow again. Like, just imagine that. And we're hardly able to keep up with what's happening now, and it's just gonna get worse and worse. According to the WHO, 1 billion people need mental health care, and nations allocate 2% of their health budgets to mental health, right? Just imagine that. 1 in 8 people around the world suffer mental health condition. We're losing 720,000 lives to suicide annually. With the prime cohort, 15 to 29-year-olds face suicide as a top 3 killer, right? Like, just imagine. And in the workplace, has anyone heard of this show called Severance on Apple TV? Yeah. It's an intense show where people could opt in to have their memory erased while they're at work, so they don't have to remember the misery of work, right? And it's like one of the hottest shows out there. So imagine we're in a place where people would implant a chip to just be able to forget their workday, right? And so we're in this place where things are mounting, change is going faster. We're seeing a breakdown in people's mental health. And just another thing I'll share that was fascinating to me. I do listen to a fair number of tech investors and kind of change makers. And one, Brad Gersten, was talking about AI. And he said, in the future, what we're going to see is a symbiotic relationship with AI that's going to start at an early age, that as children, we're going to start sort of embedding AI and sort of creating this symbiotic relationship, right? We already have a symbiotic relationship with technology. If you imagine your cell phone, it's almost like an extension, and all sorts of studies and things have been done around how people react to not having their cell phone. And think about that impact on our mental health. And so we're being pulled more and more away from our biological humanity, and at a speed that I think is going to be jarring. And so I think we're in a real place of concern. But I want to ground this too. I mentioned a bunch of stats, and what I'd be curious if everyone would be willing to do this. I just want to take a moment and give everyone a minute and a half to pair up and just turn to someone near or close to you. And if you're willing to do this, to share, how's your mental health? How are things going? And so, as authentically as possible, would appreciate that. And so I'm going to set a timer for a minute and a half. Okay, now let's make sure to give the other person a chance to talk. That's about a minute and a half, so switch if you haven't. So, and I know we have a different demographic here. We've got a group of individuals that pay more attention to mental health and take care of their own mental health, but I'm just curious, what came up?
We talked a lot about the idea of surrender, which in the context of this conference perhaps is interesting because we're talking a lot about how to make things happen. Or like the same way I think of it in a startup in San Francisco, it's like problem solving, or how do we figure out something, and then how do you balance that versus like letting go in a sense, or accepting?
Mm-hmm. That paradox. Yeah. Can we surrender, can we accept while still driving towards change? And we are a unique group. We are, I would say, in a better place than a lot of others with what's happening, what's about to happen. I was on a podcast the other day talking about things, and just this idea of this tsunami and the age of AI and everything that's going to happen. And the interviewer was like, yeah, well, you need to make sure that you're in a good place so that you could take care of your business and yada, yada. And I was like, man, I need to make sure I'm in a good place so I could take care of my kids, right? And those we care about. And so a lot of us here are in a relatively better place, maybe in a point where we're able to provide more support and to be more giving. But not everyone's there. And I think we're about to experience something quite extraordinary. And I asked myself, like, what might be the solution? And for folks who had a chance to hang out the other day, I often have more questions than I have solutions, but I want to kind of poke and prod us. And right now what happens often when people are in their most terrible state, whether mental or any other health, the first thing they're asked is for their insurance card, right? The next thing they're asked for is, how are you going to pay? And we're in a state where we're seeing extraordinary income inequality. The most powerful people in the world are the least accountable in human history that they've ever been, right? Anand Gideris wrote a book, Winner Take All, years ago, and we're just seeing that accelerate. So we're reaching this point where we're seeing income inequality, this K-curve. Some people are doing great, some people are doing terrible. And I think we all care about humanity beyond just our own socioeconomic bracket, right? Like we can't ignore what's happening around us. And so I asked myself, what is the solution? Like what are the possibilities and where is it people turn, right? And so the first one, I love this. So I asked the AI to make a picture of RFK Jr., who's currently with Anthony Fauci. And so I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, you're not going to like what you see. And it was such a controversial image. My go-to AI wouldn't make it, so I had to go to Grok, which will do whatever you want. And so the government's not going to save us. The government's not going to save us.
That's a very uplifting talk.
We're getting there. And I always try to throw in a bit of lightness. Rugged individualism is not going to save us. And so that's what we have there. Rugged individualism. He might save us. Right? So what's going to save us? Well, is our therapist going to be the superhero that sweeps in? I'll tell you a side note. It's so interesting what you can tell about people based on their favorite superhero. Batman's one of my favorite superheroes, but it's quite interesting. So is our therapist going to save us? And again, there's good therapists, there's bad therapists. Therapists in this room are extraordinary and really, really appreciate you all. But a lot of folks don't have access to therapy, right? Like they can't afford it. And what they can afford sometimes isn't very good, to be frank. Like it could actually be less supportive than one might imagine and actually in a negative way impact someone's mental health. So what are we going to do? Is there another way? Well, we've got a tsunami-sized problem, and it's going to take a tsunami-sized solution, right? And in my mind, the only thing big enough to handle this massive wave that's going to crash on all of us is all of us. Like we've got to figure out how to take care of things. And I would argue in the past, there's been an understanding of this. Mental health was way too important of a thing for us to give control up to others. And arguably, in the past, humans have really relied on things like spirituality and religion to really support one another in this way. And spirituality and religion have, for the most part, been separated from governance and capitalism so that our mental health in that way was protected because we were able to support one another, right? And I just want to drop this quote because this is something I share often at the kickoff of the summit, and it felt appropriate here. I'm also quite inspired by art and sort of this artistic mindset. Artists and leaders face similar challenges. To see reality as it is without succumbing to despair, while imagining possibilities that go far beyond current reality, to have the courage to collude against illusion while articulating a possible future previously unimaginable, and to inspire people to surpass themselves individually and collectively for the benefit of all. And this is Professor Nancy Adler from McGill. She does a lot of work looking at art and leadership. And this is one of my North Stars. I come back to this in those moments with some kind of creepy AI dude and this tsunami coming at us. So being able to face reality, not needing to ignore what's coming, but to think about what is possible. And especially, I think, in this new age, the possibilities are much more expansive. So kind of keeping that in mind, this is all thanks to AI, right? So what's going on here? We've got a Quaker Oats dude drinking O'Doul's with a Linux t-shirt, riding one of these, has anyone ridden one of these guys? I forget what they're called, but there's these like unicycle scooter things. And I love scooters. I've ridden scooters, so I'm not trying to poke fun. But this gives a sample of what I believe are some things that might be worth learning from, right? And so I'll walk through each of these. I love the Quaker setup. The Quakers, for folks who aren't familiar, had a really important impact on U.S. history, and in particular, folks like Benjamin Franklin and Philadelphia. And they have a style of worship where a group of people get together and sit in silence. There's no hierarchy, there's no preacher, there's no minister. They believe everyone has sort of this direct divine connection, and everyone could stand up and share. And so it's this real kind of communal structure, which is really kind of has this foundation of silence, which I always found fascinating. O'Doul's. So why is O'Doul's up here? I think one of the most interesting examples of a community-centric program that has been successful, and it has some limitations, is Alcoholics Anonymous, and not Mindfulness Anonymous, like Stacey was teasing us earlier. Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's all sorts of variations of that and updates happening, where you have these community-based groups that are figuring out how to support one another. Why is Linux up there? Linux is open source software. And it's one of these examples, I think, maybe one of the best examples, and the tech folks probably in the room could elaborate more on more current things, but it's an operating system that basically was an alternative in sort of a server setting to Windows. And imagine you're up against Microsoft, one of the largest, most powerful companies in the world, and this operating system took off to a point that Microsoft started offering it on their cloud services, I don't know, like 12 years ago. So I remember seeing that moment thinking, wow, like things are changing. And this is a software that's developed by community. Nobody officially owns it. It's shepherded. You have people who contribute. You have an international community. Anyone can contribute. And so like this idea of like open source to me is fascinating. And I threw in the little electronic kind of thing there just for fun. That doesn't really have a purpose. So, but just to give folks an idea of like, there's some examples of shifting to this kind of community-based model, and just to remember what the alternatives are. So, just some things that might be fun to learn from what's happening out there. And to be quite open with you guys, like this is a work in progress. Like I'm trying to figure this stuff out as we go. I don't pretend to know all the answers, just kind of this idea of like, can we get community-centric? What does that really look like? How do we do that in the current environment we're in? And some of the things I think that we could learn from some of those examples I mentioned earlier, and just generally these ideas of community-centric kind of factors that help make this work. There's guiding principles often and not dogma. There's this idea of equality and inclusion, right? Like there isn't a paywall. There's reciprocity and contribution. So there's an exchange. Like we get to support one another. It isn't one way. There's rituals and rhythms. We've got these trust containers, whether it's a kind of creating a safe space or being very transparent and clear about what's happening. You have distributed ownership, where it's not centralized, it's kind of distributed. You've got grassroots, it's self-sustaining, it can spread on its own. you've got this continuous evolution, adaptability built in. And that's not true for all cases. I know with AA, for example, I have folks who have mentioned that it needs to evolve and it's kind of stuck. But when we look in the software world, there's definitely that element of it. But if we imagine, if we're moving towards something more community-centric, these are things that might be helpful to consider. What do we need to unite in community? And for some folks who are part of the Unconference, we explored a little bit of this. But the first thing we need to know is, like, where are we going? Like, what are we doing? What are we aiming towards? What are we trying to do together? We need principles, the things that outline what's okay and what's not, these boundaries. There's an element of shared practice. We need to do things together. We need time together, but something to bond around. It's really important to have community at the core and to understand that often community works best when it's peer-to-peer, and there are different models, but when we move to something that's guru-driven or very hierarchical, there is the potential for things to go awry, and I would argue more about that, but I think so I'm advocating against the Vatican, Greg, sorry. Joke from yesterday. And we have to remember humans are flawed. I've been working on this stuff for years, and I remember sharing a talk, I think it was 2 years ago, and someone was like, you sound like you're approaching this like a founding father, like trying to come up with like the Constitution and this and that. And I was like, yeah, I am, because we need to remember how flawed human beings are to build in the mechanisms that will kind of safeguard against what we naturally will tend to do. And whether that's, there's certain elements of corruption, power abuse, whatever that looks like, we have to build in the safety mechanisms from the ground up without sort of idealizing ourselves, being in touch with our own shadows, being in touch with the complexity and the range of human nature, right? And that's how we could build something that might actually work, right? And I forget what comes next. I don't want to ruin anything. Oh, yeah, okay. So I just want to pause here for a second, actually, and maybe give a little bit of space for you all to check in with one another in terms of what have you seen out there, community-centric, whether it's something that you're part of or something that you're familiar with that maybe has some of these elements. And maybe it's connected to some of the things that I shared earlier. Maybe it's something that we haven't even talked about. But just curious to give folks a chance to talk to one another. Like, what are you seeing out there that has these elements of kind of community-centric flavors and things that we could learn from? So we'll just take, I'm going to give 3 minutes for that. Okay. Please start. Thanks, folks. And to be quite open with you guys, like, I'm kind of workshopping this. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, and just kind of work this through and hear from you guys, because there's something here, and as we go along, I think it'll get more clear. But I'm curious, what came up? What sort of community-centric experiences have you guys had and seen? Please.
So I recently moved to Boston, as you know. So that happened 13 months ago, and I was trying to find my people. Where's my people? I didn't know everybody in that city. And so one of the things that I do, I meditate daily. I teach mindfulness meditation. So I got close to a local community of meditators. But given the political climate that we're living right now, I wanted to see if I can nudge meditators to get off of the cushion and get more active. So part of the work that I do, I teach mindfulness to activists, but I also want to make activists of meditators. So I proposed to my Sangha, if you will, to the community of meditators, let's do something. And it was difficult to get some sort of engagement. Everybody wants to do something, but there's a distance between wanting to do something and doing something. Well, anyhow, something happened that was very fortuitous. That is, there is an initiative called the Beloved Community Circles of Mindful Action. And the spirit of this initiative is really to create groups. It's very interesting, from 5 to 12 people who commit to take care of one another, get to know about each other, provide support to one another, visit each other, eat together, before they decide what kind of action they are going to do. There's a purpose. It is regarding the ecological crisis, how we're going to tame the ecological catastrophe. That's one thing. And the other one is racial justice. So there is some focus there already. But it's very open and say the group itself is going to decide what action is going to come out of it. So check it out. It's called Beloved Community Circles of Mindful Action.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Piero.
All right, I'll follow your trend, Piero. Yes, I'm Tushar here from Mindful Leader and Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So community is so important to Mo and Mindful Leader, and also we can all agree for all of us. So in Brooklyn, New York, my friends and I, we have a group called Sit Heads. It's a very volunteer group, pro bono and all that. So once we have a WhatsApp group where people kind of chat and say, I'm going to sit for 30 minutes to meditate, 15, 5, 60, anything. And then someone who's available, they just show up in our virtual room that we have and they meditate. Once a month, we do Shut Up and Eat, where we eat mindfully without talking, then talk about it. Once a month, we go volunteer somewhere in a soup kitchen or somewhere. Once a month, we have a nature walk, meditative walk. Once a month, we have a book club. Once a month, they invite some teacher to have Q&A about mindfulness from any tradition, from everywhere. Yeah, and then once a month we have a phone-less Sundays where people just drop in their phones in the basket and they just hang around, read books or chit-chat and so on. And then they go out to meditate every Thursday there in the space and have dinner once a week. It's all peer-led, no hierarchy, no teachers, no guided meditations. Yeah, so something that's I have not seen being in New York City for a while, but I think it checks all these boxes over here.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Tushar. Beautiful. And I want to hear more, but I just want to kind of put a question out there. Do you guys find, is it easier to do self-care or care for someone else? Care for someone else, right. Right. And we actually had Kristen Neff, who has done a lot of work around self-care, and I challenged her about that. I was like, aren't we biologically wired actually not to do self-care? like we're actually wired not to take care of ourselves, but to take care of one another, right? And so we're kind of fighting against our biology with this idea of self-care, and it's kind of, again, the doggy with the hat on, this individualistic, kind of rugged individual approach, like, I need to take care of myself instead of this kind of care club or exchange, which it kind of sounds like. Anyone else like to share? And I would appreciate, actually, if we could get on the mic, it would be helpful. And you could just grab it and move wherever you like.
I'm at a college. I'm actually the director of belonging and spiritual life at a college. And for the last 4 years, we've done a thing called Dine and Dialogue. Once a month, faculty, staff, and students sign up for a meal. We get together. You drop your role. You're a person. You're not a faculty, staff, or student. You're just somebody who came to lunch or breakfast or dinner. Sometimes we have a topic. Sometimes we don't. Everybody talks at their table. We explain some about dialogue, about different principles of dialogue, not a debate, not a discussion, different kinds of things. But mostly it's just letting people talk, usually about a subject, and then sharing out what came at their tables. And the amount of community that on a college campus isn't that much usually between those groups, and then also between different departments. Like, you can be on a college campus and never know the people in the business office, or never know the people, you know the people that have something to do with what you do. So it's made, I can see, I don't know that I haven't done the research the right way, but I can see the difference it makes, and people say that all the time. And for some reason, dialogue and mindfulness seem to fit together. The more we do dialogue, the more people have an interest in mindfulness. The more we offer mindfulness practice, the more people come to be in dialogue. I don't know exactly how that works, but it does always. I'm validating what you're saying about community, that somehow in community we hear the shared virtues. Really, to me, there's a difference between virtues and values, and it has something to do with community too. That transcends religion. There have been the same wisdom, like I would say spiritual wisdom, from forever, and it hasn't changed all that much. And so somehow whatever we do that gets us back to that always seems to build community. Absolutely. And seems to build mindfulness too, because people get out of their reactions and they go, well, wait a minute, I need to have love, or I need to have compassion, or I need to have courage, or these things that haven't changed, even when everything changes, even when they, even in a time like now where there's so much fear and craziness and whatever, what truly has power is going to still have power.
Yes.
I think anyway.
Very true.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. And I just had a thought, slightly connected. Like, you guys have heard this idea, like, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with? You guys heard that? Who are we hanging out with, right? ChatGPT, our cell phones. And when you think about it, what are these things? They're transactional, they're efficient, they're like instant, now. And so in many ways, it's affecting who we are and how we're starting to treat one another. Right.
Just a quick comment. First of all, I love this exercise and the exercise that you yourself are going through for this organization and this. And I started a course at Georgetown, this time in the college, not in the business school, this last winter, called How to Form an Intentional Community. And so it deals with exactly these sorts of things. But one of the interesting offshoots of this, and it was a short class for seniors who had already finished their degree requirements but had to hang out till graduation, and the university was concerned to keep them occupied with something that would be relevant for the après university time. And one of the upshots of this class was we storyboarded people's ideas. We had to come up with ideas of an intentional community that they'd like to do, and so it was they had to present their ideas, and we did a lot of dialogue. But at the end of it, half the students said, "Thank you very much. You've convinced me I don't want to form an intentional community." Why? Because it's a lot of work. It's really hard to implement the sets of principles that you've identified to make this happen. It's enriching and it's great, and I myself over a long life have been involved in or created a lot of intentional communities, but it is work to do. And so I'm in another one now that I started a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, at the Inter-American Development Bank, and in a group of meditation that we were doing, and I invited the most serious meditators to go beyond our weekly sessions at the bank to create a community. And we called ourselves the Decuria, from the Latin decem, which means 10. So we defined Decuria for us means a group of 10 plus or minus 3. So we have the flexibility to grow and for people, but if we drop below a certain number, we know we should be worried. Yes. And it's built on, like the Garden of Epicurus I mentioned yesterday, on friendship, meditation, and a commitment to making our workplace and the world better and more inclusive and just, finding ways to do this. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. I've looked into intentional community too. I've been, there's certain things I'm obsessed with, and that's one of them. But I'll tell you guys a quick aside because it reminded me of this. I saw this article about someone who was comparing their relationship with their AI avatar. And they were like, my AI avatar will listen to me, is there for me, will respond to me, whereas my human friends are a pain in the butt. They're busy, they're difficult, they've got all their problems. I don't want to deal with that. And so that's so interesting, right? It's harder to do, but when we get there, the rewards are there. And in many ways, I'm thinking about everyone here, right? There must have been a moment in your mind where you're like, do I really want to go to the Mindful Leader Summit? Like, do I really want to make that commute? Do I really, right? Everyone here, right? But then when you get here and you're experiencing it, it's like, oh yeah, that's why, right? And so sometimes there's that resistance that we have to push through to get to the other side. So, just something to think about. Often, and again, like this is all kind of work in progress. But this idea of like, often we're thinking, how do we fill our seats? How many people can I get to sign up for this thing or that thing? Like, let's think, like, how much connection are we enabling? And these are some things that I ask myself in terms of what we do at Mindful Leader and how we approach things. Instead of like, how do I scale myself and become the expert? How do I empower peers to hold this together without me in the center? Like, how can I get this thing working decentralized? Instead of what apps should we buy, how do we create spaces where people could care for each other, right? Like that idea, like, how do we get people caring for each other? For leaders, instead of how do I drive engagement, how do I model care and reciprocity so it cascades, right? So these are just ideas that I kind of want to plant and get folks thinking about. And we're going to skip this. This guy's so we could rely on AI to care for us, but the problem is it's one way. And we want to serve. We want to be of help. And often what happens is that there's these one-way kind of situations. And, I remember, like, to just even speak about this, we get bombarded with people who want to speak. There's tons of people who want to be speakers and want to speak. And for me, I'm like, shit, like, go set up a place and speak to your community. Like there are many opportunities that you could create. And there are also opportunities where it's an exchange, where people take turns and we swap. Instead, there's sort of this like fight for a limited number of spots, this sort of top-down, one-way thing. And right now, we're in a situation where people want to help, and we know, and I don't have the stats and the science available. We've got wonderful researchers here that could help confirm this. But that we feel fulfilled and happiest when we give, when we're able to help take care of others. And so it's an exchange. We need help, we receive it, but we could also give it. And when we make that one way, dangerous things happen. And of course, in a capitalistic, technology-driven environment, often we're kind of pushed in that way. So I want to see, this might work. I don't know if audio works. Like, I didn't test this, guys, but we're going to see if this works. I thought this was fascinating.
The one thing that nobody seems to tell you is that as a country becomes more and more developed, the one thing that gets eroded is community.
Yeah.
The village disappears.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is you have to buy the village back.
Yeah.
You know?
Buy the house.
You
buy a
literally,
house,
you have to
keep a
buy
yeah.
somebody to look after your kid. You have to buy somebody to help you clean your house. You have to buy somebody to help you fix your.
Yeah,
you have to buy somebody to cook. You have to buy. You're buying the same village that they tricked you into not having. Like I'm always amazed at the con of it all. Mm-hmm. This machine, this larger thing, told everyone you should get your own house and you should live by yourselves. How can you still live with your parents in the same house? This is ridiculous. What? Mm-hmm. And so everyone goes off, they get their own house to live by themselves, they have a kid, and now you need somebody to come and look after the kid, but they can't just come if you know what, you should get a bigger house, they could live with you. You could have a live-in nanny.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, they call that an aunt.
Mm-hmm. Or a sister.
They call that a grandmother.
Yeah.
They call it a sister.
Yeah.
Right? So, just something to think about. This is natural, right? This is how it's meant to be. This is how we're wired. We're wired to take care of one another. And we've created structures which have pushed us in a direction that's against our natural biology. And whenever we do that, we get miserable. So when I look at what's happening, and this is the hopium, so we're moving towards a state that many people claim, maybe not David Gellis, but we're moving towards a state of potentially sustainable abundance. And I believe that. I believe AI could do some extraordinary things. I believe we're entering a new age. And when we enter a new age, we have new currency, right? We have to ask ourselves, what becomes precious in this new age if what a lot of experts, I'm going to pick on David, not David, but a lot of experts believe we are entering an age of abundance where the cost of things will drop to a point that our material needs will be met in all sorts of beautiful and wonderful ways. And so as we enter this new age, what's precious? What is the currency, right? Imagine you could have anything you want materialistically. And what comes up for me, what's precious, what each of us has that you can't kind of replicate, is the ability to give our attention to someone, to give our time, and to give our care. I'm not going to use the L word. Love gets sort of used in all sorts of distorted ways, and so I'm going to focus on care. And so those are the things that become most precious: our attention, our time, and our care, right? And the funny thing about care is every one of us holds an endless supply, but it only has value when we exchange it, right? So just imagine that. And in my mind, this new economy, this new potential, sort of this new thing that we might break through, it'll be more peer-to-peer, decentralized. Give what you can, take what you need. Common humanity, kind of reconnecting us. No insurance forms. Like, there's a movement to like get mindfulness reimbursed by insurance, and I don't want to push against that. But the idea of having to deal with my insurance company for anything more than I need to isn't something I look forward to. No gurus, no gatekeepers, right? So, I do believe we're going to move towards a new currency, and instead of stocks and bonds, it's going to be all about bonds, all about connection. And I want to end on this, just because I thought that was cute, right? This is where I'm hoping we head, and it's not easy. I mean, Greg, it's not easy at all. This is hard, but we're moving in that direction, and Mindful Leader is really committed to this idea of community-centric approaches, and the book that's out there, I want to congratulate Mark on made the bestseller. David's is a bestseller. I think my book is the least popular book on Amazon right now. I shared with my brother, I'm number 807,000, and he's like, but wait, how many books are on Amazon? And I'm like, well, maybe 1,200,000. He's like, you're ahead of 400,000 people. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But that's what we're trying to do. And so, I'm just not talking about this. We're trying to do it. Open MBSR is my attempt to create a framework that hopefully could bring this about. Meditate Together is active right now, and we're doing this there. And I would like to invite everyone to come check out what we're doing, figure out if there's a way for you to get involved as we're figuring things out. I mean, I am the first to admit, and you can see, it's a work in progress. But we've got some elements that make sense. I think that really make sense, that are kind of defendable in all sorts of ways. And so please check out the book. You've got it already. And Meditate Together is a 90-day free trial. We're in beta. And so, we're working through things, and it's a very robust app. We've got a number of members here, but it's 90 days free. Check it out. I would love to see you guys out there, and would love any thoughts that you have around these ideas about making things community-centric as we enter this age of AI and kind of trying to remain have this hopium with us. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to help close this out. Thank you.